We'll start for week 7. Hello. Okay, so I'm late this week. I'm so sorry that I didn't get everything read on time. Hi. But we've been so busy. It's been crazy here, and I'm a little out of it today. But I'll do my best to do this little summary, and then next week I hope to be on top of things and, ready for our next video. Okay, so this week we read more about habits, and it was really good, very practical ideas. What did you guys think of this week? Hello. So let me see. I didn't get the questions posted, but this would have been a great week for discussion questions throughout the week. I wish I had had time to ask you guys questions so we could have interacted more, but life just stepped in and I just didn't have time. But hopefully you guys are ready to interact with me and tell me what you thought about this week, because I thought it was really great advice that she gave about how to form these good habits that we really want in our children. So we'll go ahead and get started. And let's see, we were on section 5 in this chapter about habits. Oh no, section 7 is where we started. So she starts talking about indecision and how that is what forms the habit of dawdling in our children. Hello. And she said, the effort of decision we have seen is the greatest effort of life. Not the doing of the thing, but the making up of one's mind as to which thing to do first. And I have seen that even in myself this past week as we were moving, and there's like so much to do and so many boxes to unpack and so many checks to check off the list that, oh my gosh, it's hard to know like what do I do next. But it's just a matter of doing the next thing, really. It's not about, feeling like you have to do everything right now. You just do one thing at a time. And if that's hard for me as a grown-up in these stressful times, how much harder is it for our children whenever they feel like they're being overloaded with information or tasks to do? So she makes the forming or the unforming or breaking of this habit of dawdling. She gives us advice as to how to supplant the contrary habit in order to remove this habit for dawdling, for example. And she says, the inveterate dawdling is a habit to be supplanted only by the contrary habit, and the mother must devote herself for a few weeks to this cure as steadily and untiringly as she would to the nursing of her child through measles. So I thought that was really interesting. It's something as simple as, if your kid was sick, of course you would take care of them in order to get them back to full health. Of course you would, make sure they had what they needed, and you'd have a watchful eye on them. And she said it's the same with the breaking of these habits. It's up to us to have the watchful eye and to make sure that they're, performing the little task or whatever it is that we're wanting to implement as a habit for them in order to help them. And she said at some point down here that we're to be their ally in this process. And I thought that was a great word for that, because we don't want to be their, bossy pants. We want to come alongside them and help them along as they are gaining these habits and forming these habits. She said after a few, and less is best, earnest words, so not, scolding and rah, 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 but discuss it quick and to the point. Tell them this is the habit we need to break or we need to make, and let them know that it's their duty to overcome it. And then from there, we encourage them, this is what we're gonna do, and then, drop it and tell them, I'm gonna help you with it. Like, what if I forget? Well, it's okay, I'll remind you, and then from there we go on with hopeful expectancy and not exasperated frustration. And slowly, as we continue to do this and be their partner in this habit formation, we'll start to see the habit unfold, which is our goal. But she warns us To permit any reversion to the old habit is to let go of all this gain. To form a good habit is the work of a few weeks, but to guard it is a work of incessant care. So we can't, she said several times in this chapter, you want to take care that you are consistent and don't think, well, he's just done so good, I won't make him put his shoes up this time. I've done that even this week where I see their shoes in the floor, even though I told them, our living room is smaller, so you gotta put your shoes up. I'll think to myself, well, he's little, I'll tell him next time and just put them up for him. No, Charlotte says, no, don't do that, because you're breaking the good habit that you were just trying to grow in their, in their mind. And then she goes on to talk about how habit is a delight in itself. The forming of a good habit is a delight in itself, for the reward goes hand in hand with the labor. And I had never thought of it in this way before, but it's very true, because we feel like, oh, it's so hard to form these habits, but really the more our children do them, or the more we do them, the easier it becomes, and it becomes like second nature, and it's not so laborious anymore. Laborious, I don't know how to say that word. Anyways, so the more we do it, the easier it becomes. And our problem is, she says, as a matter of fact, this misguided sympathy on the part of mothers is the one thing that makes it a hard undertaking to train a child in good habits. It's the nature of the child to take to habits as kindly as the infant takes to his mother's milk. So, like she said last week, our children are creatures of habit already. We don't have to make them creatures of habit. They already are. So, whenever we start to feel sorry or, oh, this habit's so hard, no, we are working against ourselves. She says, just continue down the path of creating these habits, and it will become easier as you go along. And that was kind of a light bulb for me, which, I think we know these things, but to read them in print or to hear them said out loud makes it kind of like, oh, well, duh. Of course it's easier the longer you do it. But, we make it harder than we need to. Okay, and then she talks about tact, watchfulness, and persistence. So these are kind of the three things that mothers need to do in order to help our children get these habits down pat. And she says that tact, watchfulness, and persistence are the qualities the mother must cultivate in herself, and with these she will be astonished at the readiness with which the child picks up the new habit, which I think is true. Tact, short and sweet. Be watchful, watch what they're doing, make sure that they're doing, and be persistent, like we already said, and don't let them slip. Don't let them do it, because once you do, they'll take advantage because they know. Okay, stages in the formation of a habit. So she gave an example of a mother and son, Johnny, and this mother wanted Johnny to learn to shut the door every time he leaves a room, because apparently it was polite back in the early 1900s to shut the door every time you leave a room, and you don't want to make your guests uncomfortable. So she gives this little example, which I thought was neat because it's a good picture of what we should be doing on our end and what we should expect from our children in return. She tells Johnny, this is your task. You're going to get in the habit of shutting the door. And Johnny says, well, but what if I forget? What if I'm so busy that I forget or I run off? And she said, it's okay, I'll help you. And she leaves it at that. She doesn't, talk about it. And so that's what the mother does. Charlotte says, of two things, the mother should be careful. That he never slips off without shutting the door. So we're going to make sure we're watchful and we make sure he does it. And that she never lets the matter become a cause of friction between herself and the child, taking the line of his friendly ally to help him against that bad memory of his. So becoming his ally, his partner in the task. And, I think of my own boys, just, anytime I want to help them or show that I'm willing to help them, they get more excited about doing whatever it is that they're supposed to be doing. So I think that's just a great example. And then she talks again about the dangerous stage, which she said over and over in this section. Don't feel as though he's tried so hard and now we'll just let him take a break just this once, because once you do, they take advantage. She says mothers must persist, be persistent. Okay, so then she goes on to talk about infant habits, which she kind of says form, our habits start forming even in the earliest stages of our life. She quotes, the whole group of habitudes, half physical and half moral, on which the propriety and comfort of everyday life depend, are received passively by the child. So it's not that he thinks that he needs to do or form these habits. A lot of our earliest habits are formed by outside forces. What are we exposed to? What habits do we see going on around us? So a lot of these things are even out of his or her control. Then she talks about the branches of infant education. She says that cleanliness, order, neatness, regularity, and punctuality are all branches of infant education, and that these things should be about him like the air he breathes. So as natural as the air he breathes, these things should always be taking place, which is a great list. Cleanliness, order, neatness, regularity, and punctuality. Simple things, but really profound things in the life of a teeny-weeny, child, or even the bigger kids too. It goes without saying that for most people, cleanliness is a necessity, even down to any unseen odors, she says. Then she goes on to talk about sensitive nose and teaching our children to, learn to use their nose to their benefit, because although our sense of smell has been given to us as an avenue of pleasure, it's also a sort of danger signal. So we want to teach them to notice different smells and to know the difference between fresh and stale or stuffy air, which is important, especially when you have a gas fireplace or a gas stove. You need to know if the gas is left on. That's just an example. Okay, and she talks about how the baby is ubiquitous. Mothers should remember that babies notice everything, and they're constantly being impressed upon by outside, sources. And they'll base a lot of their decision making and behavior upon those things which they've seen or been exposed to. And considering this, we should be more intentional about keeping their space clean and tidy, because they are, what they're exposed to affects them, whether we realize it or not. And in this part, I thought of myself as a very early mother. I had my first baby very, very young, and really kind of battled depression and anxiety, and it was so hard for me to keep up with our house. It was so hard for me because I had all this mental stuff going on as well, which I didn't realize at the time, but looking back, I know now. But I think of my poor little, 1-year-old baby, and he's like trying to make his way through, the clutter in our house at the time, and it does affect him, I think, and we can't not consider, how does this affect our children too, not just us. Which, I'm not just a super neat freak now, but at the time it was really bad. I would be embarrassed to show you pictures, but anyways, moving on. Okay, so personal cleanliness, she says, is an early habit that should be formed. And she says that a child's space deserves the same respect and tidiness as even our dining room or whatever the fanciest room in your house is that you like to keep really clean. She says they deserve the same respect in their space. And when we don't provide this for them, she tells us that we're degrading him, which, I'd never thought of that, but it's kind of true. So we want to give our children their own little personal spaces that is clean and tidy and, just like the best room in our house, because they deserve to have a clean and tidy space too. She admits that yes, they can have their time to be messy and get dirty. That's part of childhood. She's not like saying, no, don't ever let your kids get dirty. But she encourages us to teach them to keep themselves clean and the good habits of cleanliness and washing up and learning to wash themselves and learning to take pleasure in tending to, their own upkeep or the upkeep of their room or what have you. Then she put in a little insert here about, modesty and purity and the habit of obedience and the sense of honor. And she talked about whenever we're teaching our children to bathe or clean themselves, this is a good opportunity to teach about, modesty, purity, inappropriate touching that that isn't good. This is whenever we, give them a short little, you don't have to sit on it too long and explain too much, but, introduce to them early what is acceptable, what's not, and, go from there. And she says that keeping our children active and busy with their interests greatly decreases their opportunities to get caught up in any secret vices, which goes for the younger and the older children. And I'm no expert on, the whole personal space or whatever, but I did have a couple of books I wanted to show for this part. For mom and dad, this book is really good, Bringing Up Boys by James Dobson. It talks about all kinds of boy things, and there is a girl thing as well for these, more sensitive issues maybe, which is not all sensitive stuff. It's regular, normal things as well, but it also digs into that too. So, if you are interested in, especially like as a mom of boys, I didn't know anything about boys and what they do and all that kind of thing to begin with. So this one was a really good one. It is written from a Christian perspective, but it's a very good resource to have as a parent of boys. And there's a girl one as well. And then for the boys, whenever they get older and they are, more, curious about their body or whatever, this one is one that we have that our boys have used, the Boys Body Book. It gives good little tidbits of information that I read this book myself before I let my oldest read it, because I wanted to make sure that it covered the things that I thought should be covered, but didn't go into things that I didn't think should be taught in a book. So this one is a good one, and I would recommend this one. And there's also a girl one for this one. I have not read the girl one, but I'm assuming it's similar in nature. So those are my only two books for this week, but I thought I would mention those because, this was a kind of a sensitive topic area, and I'm no expert in those areas, and those are kind of a family by family thing. You do what's best for your family, and there you go. So those are the resources for that I thought I would mention. Okay, so moving on from there, she talked about how order is essential, and it's just as important as cleanliness. Our children's belongings shouldn't consist of all of our broken leftovers, she said. Instead, they should be taught that once something is broken and can't be fixed, then it has to be replaced. And whenever we're taught like, nope, sorry, you broke it, you don't get it anymore, it may encourage them to take better care of their belongings. And also, orderly habits are very important as well. So she says we may be sentimental about all the toys scattered on the floor, but allowing this habit to grow is kind of detrimental to them in the future, because now they're in the habit of just being a slob. And that this little section made me think of that quote that goes around, social media, where it's like, my children won't remember how clean my house was or the crumbs on my floor or the whatever, but they will remember. Well, they might not remember, but they will have the bad habit. So, and that's for me too. I'm not good at making my kids pick up their stuff, so I'm totally not preaching here. I'm preaching to myself too. So this is something I need to work on too. Making it a habit of just put it back when you're done. It's not far. Just go to your room, put it on the shelf, So she mentions, like, everybody condemns a mother whose house is a mess, But some of the blame should be placed on her mother because her mother didn't teach her the habit of picking up. And her blame is that she hasn't cured herself of this bad habit. So we don't want to let these bad habits of messiness grow in our children, is what she's saying. Okay, and then she says even the 2-year-old should learn to put away his playthings. She says that mothers should make it a game, make it fun, because when they're little bitty, picking up is fun to a little kid, or helping clean is fun. They find it fun. Not so much when they get older, then they start the sighing and the rolling of the eyes, but you know, at least they'll be in the habit of preferring a clean atmosphere than being used to messiness when they get older, because you've already instilled this habit of, well, we just pick up because that's what we do, and then it's easier to build this habit than to create it later. Just found you. Do you save these lives so we can watch again? Yes, I do. I save them on my IGTV channel. It will be there, and also on my website. So they're all on both of those places. So you can find, and on my YouTube channel too, which I don't like talk about my YouTube channel because I just link it to my website. But yes, it will be available to watch later. All of the past ones are as well, so that if anybody needs to catch up, they are there for the viewing. Okay. You guys are really quiet today, or I've missed questions or something. No, you guys are just really quiet. Okay. Anyways, yay, I was going to ask the same question. I'll go back for the videos. Good, yes, they are there. That's why I posted them. So that, because a lot of people have fallen behind. I fell behind this week, but yes, they are there for you guys, and they'll be there forever. Okay, so neatness is similar to order, she said, but it leans more towards like styling and aesthetic purposes, you know, making it look pretty, not just orderliness, but prettiness as well. And she said we should teach our children to, you know, learn to arrange things in a pleasing way. And you know, some people are gifted at that, some people aren't. It doesn't mean you have to be an interior decorator. Just teach them to appreciate nice things, and I think that will come naturally. I mean, not nice things, but things organized nicely. That's what I meant to say. Okay, and then regularity, which is really important, and I learned this, you know, through, I just lost my train of thought, you know, experience, that regularity and consistency is so important for just the day-to-day. You know, she reminds us when there's no stable routine in place, that's when kids act naughty, because they're all over the place, just like we feel all over the place whenever we don't, you know, you have like a lazy day and you don't do anything productive, and then you feel like it was a waste of a day or whatever. It's the same for our kids. We need to provide them, or try our best to provide them with some sort of routine, whether it's, you know, their sleeping routine, or, you know, their schoolwork routine. This is when we get up, this is when we eat, this is when we clean up, this is when we do schoolwork, this is when we go to sports or extracurriculars. Try to have some kind of routine in place. And I know that it's very hard for me. I'm not naturally somebody who just follows the routine to a T every day, and I have my same, you know, coffee at the exact same time. That's a struggle for me. So if you're good at that, please share your tips, because I don't have great tips, except for what Charlotte says. That's what I'm doing. Okay, then she goes on to several of these little sections. There were several sections under this physical exercise portion of this chapter. She talked about daily exercise is important. We know this, you know, getting out there, using their muscles, learning their strengths and how to use their limbs and bodies. Practicing good manners. She suggested, you know, allowing them to play out little, you know, scenes where they're practicing their good manners, or even, you know, silly stuff with you if you just have an only child. you can, say yes ma'am and no ma'am or sir to them, and they usually will say it back too. Or that's what I do. If I say yes sir to my boys, they'll say yes ma'am, so they'll repeat what you say for those types of things. Training of the ear and voice. She encourages us to help our children learn proper pronunciation of words, which I say that with my little hick country accent, that we should be saying these correctly, but I don't know, I'm not British. But she does encourage mothers to train them to say words correctly. And then she recommends teaching French, which we talked about several weeks ago, in order to help them train their mouths and ears. I assume that French helps with the, brain to mouth process, I guess. I'm assuming that's why she says that. Which if you teach French to your kids, you're awesome. And the habit of music. She says taste in music is actually a habit picked up through what our children are exposed to, like many of the things that they, pick up. It's exposure. And she suggests that all children should be trained to sing, and we do them a disservice when we neglect them in this training. Okay, so that was the big chunk of the section this week, and then she concludes by wrapping it up and saying the purpose of all this habit training is that it enables the mother to let her children alone. And there was one point where she talked about the forming these habits is like the winding up of a clock. You only have to do it every now and then it just tends to itself. It does what it's supposed to do. And she says that is what this habit training is for. It's to wind up their, good habits, and as these habits are formed, we can, let them be, and they do what they're supposed to do because it's a habit formed in their mind. So instead of standing over them with a running list of do's and don'ts, we let them be, and they can grow to fruitful purpose, is what she says. And the very last quote in this book I loved. She said, "The gardener, it is true, digs about and dungs, prunes and trains his peach tree, but that occupies a small fraction of the tree's life. All the rest of the time, the sweet airs and sunshine, the rains and dews play about it and breathe upon it, get into its substance, and the result is peaches. But let the gardener neglect his part, and the peaches will be no better than sloes. Sloes. I don't know how to say S-L-O-E-S. I guess it's sloes. So, whenever we do our part, these little parts of instilling the habits, we can let them grow like a peach tree, and they'll produce the fruit that we're looking for. Sorry, what book are you using? I know it showed. We're doing book 1 of her series. It's Home Education. So it's the very first book in the series. Okay, so that was the end of this week's great quote and image. Yes, I love the image of the peach tree, and that our part is small, but it makes such a huge impact on the full growth that we're looking for and the fruit that we're hoping to bear in this process. So yes, this section was really, really great, and I read all this section on yesterday, while my boys were at basketball practice, but I couldn't put it down. It was so good, and such practical advice, and so many light bulb moments for me this week. Like, duh, hello, that's so easy. Why didn't I think of it that way before? But that's why we're reading this book. So this one was shorter, only 15 pages. This coming week, we are reading, let's see, we're starting part 4, Some Habits of Mind, Some Moral Habits is the section that we're starting. It's pages 135 to 154. And I will do my very, very best to get the journaling pages up like tomorrow, hopefully, so that you guys have them. I apologize for not having them up this week. We just had a ton going on. But anyways, I will go ahead and end the video. If you guys have any questions, y'all please let me know. And if you are behind, you go catch up, and I will see you next week. Hopefully Sunday or Monday we'll do another video for the next section. So I will see you guys later. Bye.